Nikkei Asia News Roundup
with Jada and Brian. Welcome to the Nikkei Asia News Roundup with your hosts, Jada and Brian.
bringing you the latest updates and insights on the dynamic world of Asia and more.
Now let's delve into the headlines. This program is brought to you by Nikkei.
Indonesian students and labor groups are planning more protests over dissatisfaction with the government's responses to their demands, with the president of the Confederation of Indonesian Worker Unions saying that labor groups would very likely stage demonstrations ahead of the announcement of new minimum wages expected in October.
Contenders to succeed outgoing Japanese Prime Minister Shigeru Ishiba are trying to broaden support for their bids ahead of the October 4th election to decide the Liberal Democratic Party's next president.
Thailand's new Prime Minister Anutin Charnvirakul is expected to implement economic stimulus programs, including the revival of a popular shopping subsidy the country had during the COVID-19 pandemic, as he forms a cabinet that will focus on household support to gain a quick political victory.
An aircraft maintenance unit under Malaysia's Capital A major shareholder of budget carrier AirAsia, plans to more than double its operational capacity in the country to capture growing demand in Southeast Asia, its chief executive said.
More than 300 workers from South Korea released from immigration detention in the U.S. have returned home, capping a week-long saga that has thrown into question the East Asian country's commitment to the kind of high-tech investments coveted by President Donald Trump.
The Chinese government is cracking down on malicious online disinformation targeting automakers, as companies face continued attacks on their brands and models via social media amid intense competition. Now moving on to the next segment.
Australia's surf giants drift as big retail and newcomers catch wave. On a chilly August afternoon, surfers in wetsuits bobbed patiently along the break at Australia's Bells Beach, braving frigid southern hemisphere winter temperatures and a choppy swell as they waited for the next clean set of waves. That same mood of hope challenged by uncertainty now dominates the big legacy brands that have grown out of a maverick subculture spirit into a multi-billion-dollar trade over the last 5 decades, but have faced varying degrees of wipeout in recent years. Amid bankruptcies, buyouts, and shifting consumer fashion trends, large question marks hang over Rip Curl, Quiksilver, and Billabong. How do big businesses stay surfer cool when they are closer to the shopping mall than the beach? And how do they deal with competition on those two fronts? For Torquay, the Victorian town a short car ride up the coast from Bells Beach, renowned among the global surfing community and where Rip Curl and Quiksilver were born, the highs and recent lows have been felt acutely since the peaks of the 1990s and early 2000s. The surf capital of Australia, with a population estimated just over 25,000, has long ridden the same economic waves as the companies that emerged from its surf scene. While the Big Three's dominance may have waned, surfing, now an established Olympic sport, is still growing by most estimates. The global surfing equipment market was worth $4.4 billion in 2024 and is expected to grow to $6.3 billion by 2030, according to data from Grand View Research.
Sri Lanka scraps perks for ex-presidents in landmark austerity push. Sri Lanka's parliament last week voted to strip former presidents of their lifelong state-funded perks, marking a watershed moment for the island's political culture, and forcing powerful figures, such as ex-leader Mahinda Rajapaksa, to vacate their official Colombo residences. The break with decades of political tradition, touted in last year's victorious general election campaign by the National People's Power Party, under now President Anura Kumara Dissanayake, was passed last week by a majority of 150 votes in the 225-member legislature. The decision forces leaders who once reached the pinnacle of state power to return to private life without the cushion of taxpayer-funded privileges. Some analysts said that while fiscal savings from the move are likely to be modest, the political symbolism of the shift is deep. They noted that it underscores the NPP's commitment to cutting waste and responding to public anger over elite entitlement in the wake of the country's worst economic crisis since independence. But some critics argue the repeal is less about principle and more about punishing the political old guard, raising questions about whether the government is wielding reform as a weapon.
And now for news highlights. Today we are sharing a couple of Nikkei Asia's most well-read stories in the last few days.
And we have a variety of stories in our top 10 ranking. Number one was actually about a movie in Vietnam that's become a blockbuster hit in the country. And it was produced partly by the Vietnamese military, which was interesting.
Yeah, one of the big deals of this movie is that it is right now the highest grossing Vietnamese film of all time.
Mm-hmm.
It just came out 3 weeks ago.
Yes.
Yeah, and it's called Mùa Dô, or Red Rain.
Red Rain, yeah. It's grossed, it said, about $23 million as of now.
If you know your box office numbers, that doesn't sound like much, but the comparison is that Avengers Endgame, which I believe is the first or second highest grossing film of all time worldwide, only got half of that in Vietnam.
Yes, yeah, more than doubled. Red Rain has more than doubled inside of Vietnam. But it's been a hit partly because of the timing this year,
yes.
right?
Yes, we just finished up, I believe, or maybe we're still going on with the celebrations of the 80th anniversary of Vietnam's independence. But they've had wars since then, including the Vietnam War with the United States and North and South Vietnam fighting each other. And that's what this movie covers, particularly a battle which was the longest battle.
Was it 81?
It was 81 days. It was essentially a siege of an old citadel that was being used as a stronghold. And it's mostly about North and South Vietnam fighting.
Yeah.
But with also U.S. support with artillery and firepower. And it covers the heroics and the negotiations to end the war as a side story on it, from what I can tell. I'll admit I haven't seen the movie because it just came out. I don't know if it's playing over here. But I did watch the preview and I read some of the summaries. So to me, looking at the preview, it looked like a kind of standard war film. But there is an interesting quote in the article about it where he said, yes, it gives you all the Western thrills, like a Western cinema with explosions and war, but it touches on the humanity. And that's something that Vietnamese cinema is known for.
Yeah.
So it's apparently being a good mixture that way. But the other combination is that it is patriotic, and right now is a very patriotic season in Vietnam.
Yeah, and it seems, I guess it was sort of refreshing as well, because usually top movies in Vietnam are romances or comedies, and more recently a little bit of horror. But this war film came out, and everybody in the story who is quoted there, they talk a lot in detail about what they liked and what sort of emotions it brought out of them. So we suggest our listeners to go check out our article and maybe the movie itself.
You can find a way to see the movie.
Yeah.
I kind of want to see it now.
Yeah. After reading the story, aside from that, we covered a lot of political crises in Southeast Asia and Asia as a whole in the last few episodes, but we have a new protest going on.
Yeah, the one that it's hard to think that just 2 weeks ago, nothing was being reported from Nepal. And in that time, there were massive protests, violent, deadly protests. Members of the government paraded through the street and attacked, escaping. And then the overthrow or the dissolution of the government, and now there's a new prime minister. Yeah.
And what's interesting is that although the protests are overall about corruption, the recent trigger was a social media ban.
because people were, I think, complaining about the corruption on social media, and it was a one-two punch of, enough is enough.
Yeah.
And notably, the articles, our articles and a lot of other news articles are calling it the Gen Z protests because it was mostly led by students and people in their 20s.
Yes. I think the corruption social media thing that was going on was that there was a Nepo kid campaign going on. So a lot of people were posting about the lavish lifestyles of politicians' children and allegations of corruption. So, but it'll be interesting to see how the interim government will proceed.
Because the new prime minister is the former chief justice of Nepal, and she looks like she has a lot of work on her hands over the next few months.
Yes. And then what I thought interesting was in the top 10, we had 2 stories about undersea cables, which I think this is the first time that we've seen this topic in the top. But
yeah, we've had stories about it before, but I don't think they've made it this far up the rankings.
Yeah. And one's about Taiwan's fight to protect its vital undersea cables. So it talks about in recent years there's been sort of sabotages thought to be by the Chinese government and how Taiwan's trying to strengthen its undersea cables, and also about Japan investigating undersea cable supply chains for China exposure. So Japan is trying to make the parts for undersea cables more domestic.
That story had a really interesting fact I didn't realize. Well, for starters, undersea cables, the majority of data around the world goes through undersea cables, not through satellites.
Yeah, like over 90%,
It's a massive amount of data, and those cables, they are literally physical cables sitting on the seafloor, and they run up a beach, and they go to a data center, and all that technological stuff. But something like 90% or even more than 90% of all undersea cable infrastructure is put together by 3 companies.
Oh, yeah.
An American company, a French company, and a Japanese company, and that's it. But there is also a Chinese company that's been rising up the ranks, and it looks like Japan is being very cautious about how much involvement they may have.
Yeah.
And that brings us to the close of today's episode.
We look forward to having you join up again for the next edition of the Nikkei Asia News Roundup.
Stay informed, stay curious. Until next time, I'm Jada.
And I'm Brian. See you again, and take care. This program is brought to you by Nikkei.